Go ahead.
Billy, how you doing?
Doing good, Joe. How are you?
Good. Hey, you going same way with starters, or what are you doing tonight?
I'm going to probably hold that.
Okay. Is that kind of standard for you? Do you usually hold?
Yeah, I usually try to hold it, Joe, just to when we have to turn it in, just making sure. One is, I think, from a strategy, tactical standpoint. And then two, I think sometimes with all that's going on with this COVID thing and testing and all that stuff, I think it's just better to wait.
Okay. I won't bother with it anymore.
No, that's fine.
The other question I have is with Garrett, his availability, where his conditioning is, and the other guys as well that missed the last game. Where are all they at?
I think all those guys are available today. The only guy that is not available is Thad. He's still out. He is progressing, getting better. I thought Garrett, Denzel, and Sato, got more practice time in after the Atlanta game. Got some extra work in after practice. I mean, obviously, it's going to take them a little bit of time, to get where they need to be. But I think all three guys are in a much, much better place now after being out for certainly a pretty long period of time. So I think they feel better about where they're at physically.
Casey, go ahead.
Welcome.
Hey, Billy, here's another thing I don't know your philosophy on, but are you a coach who likes to let players pick captains? And if so, has that process happened?
No, we have not done that. We have not. So, I think that I'm not necessarily opposed to it, but we really haven't gotten into any of that yet.
Thanks.
Darnell, you're up now, bud.
Billy, for all the talk about Kobe and whether or not he's a point guard, can he play the position and all of that, it seems that the most of the talk is about him offensively. But defensively, I mean, look at the guys he's got to go against just in the early going, the opposing point guards. I noticed, obviously, you guys started him off the ball against the Hawks. Now you got Brogdon and Oladipo coming in here, Curry the next night. What do you need out of him defensively? And if Zach going to have to be the main perimeter stopper in the first unit?
Well, I mean, to your point, with both Brogdon and Oladipo, they're both going to have to guard those guys. But, the other thing, Darnell, was we got really, really spread out in the game defensively, way too much. There was not enough help. That was more focused on their own man. That is something we've really tried to spend a lot of time with coming out of that Atlanta game. So, I think Kobe's got to be able to guard his position. That's just the reality of it. There are nights, certainly, where we'll move around matchups, whether it's to start the game, the middle of the game, or the end of the game, to get the best matchup we feel at that point in time. But I think Kobe's got the ability to do that. And, he's going to your point, be in a position where, certainly this early part of the season, there's a lot of great guards that he's going to have to match up against. So, he has not, I've always told him this, he has not shot the ball well, at least going back into the last game. And there's still other things that he can do to impact, the team, whether it be playmaking or his defense. So we're going to need that from him to be, complete on both ends of the floor.
How does he need to grow defensively? In what ways?
I think some of the coverages is probably different for them this year. And I think, we got to build the correct habits. That's going to take a little bit of time. But I think that, on the ball, I think he needs a little bit more of a presence, a little bit more physicality. Especially as a point guard, you're going to be dealing with a tremendous amount of pick and rolls. He's going to be in a lot of pick and rolls. So he's got to avoid screens, get over screens. He's got to fight to get back on the ball. I don't think that that's necessarily just him. I think it's our entire team. We've got to do a better job of that. And we've had our bigs back, for most of the part. We have moved them up a little bit based on personnel, with a guy like Trae Young. But a lot of it he got on his own. And he also got to the free throw line a ton. But he's got to get into the ball, and he, I think people have got to feel him. I thought he did a much, much better job, just going back to the preseason, like the first game against John Wall. I thought John was able to get the ball wherever he wanted to get it. And then I think he picked up a little bit more full court. He applied a little bit more pressure. But I think he's got to have a presence on the ball. And then I think his help has got to be really good, where he's got to do two things. He's got to be in help, and he's got to get back out to those elite offensive players. I think a lot of times your job is a lot tougher off the ball than it necessarily is on the ball, because on the ball, you got one responsibility to get into the ball, guard it, and battle over screens. Off the ball, you could be low and you may have to pull across and, be in the restricted area, outside the restricted area. For him, it's going to be charges. It could be jamming up, getting to the nail, elbow help, and then having to close back out to a really good offensive player. Those are really difficult things to do. I think one of the things that happened is he's generally our primary guy getting back in transition early in the game. Collins got behind him. They threw it over his head and he dunked it. So, I mean, there's just a lot of things now. I wouldn't say for him, but for our team that we have to do better collectively.
Appreciate that.
Yep.
Jamal Collier, go ahead.
Yeah, Billy, just in general, you may have answered this before, but when you have a full strength of guys, do you like to have sort of a set rotation starting lineup? Is that thing that's going to be sort of flexible?
I mean, I think for the guys, it's always a good thing, where they know when, that when and where their minutes are coming from. We've gone through a period of time of 2 preseason games, if not more. And then this first game, Atlanta, with somewhat of a limited roster with some guys being out. And now you've got guys that are coming back and they have not seen any live action. I have no idea what they're going to look like. I think they all would probably say, yes, they're ready to play, but they're probably nowhere near where they'd like to be. Physically, they probably would like a lot more reps. They would like probably a longer, runway, so to speak, to get themselves ready. But that's not the case at this point in time. But I do think it helps the players when they know. For us, and for me as a coach, with this group being relatively new for me, we haven't seen enough, to be honest with you, in training camp with a lot of different lineups, because we've had a variety of guys out. And that's been hard to do. And that's not only us. I've said this before. Everybody else is dealing with the same thing. And you got to mix and match. And you're going to have to probably go through a little bit of trial and error to see what works out there, what looks good out there. I think it's very easy to speculate on paper, what something may or may not look like. But until you actually see it out there live, then you have at least a small sample size of information to go off of. But we need to get those guys out on the floor some, just to see how they can contribute and help to our team. And then, hopefully to your point, be able to build out maybe like a rotation, a number of guys have an idea when they're going in. I've done a lot of different things. We've taken Lowry off early to get him back, and then we've kind of let him go a little bit longer. We've taken Zach off, sometimes maybe a little bit earlier than normal. Same thing with Kobe. And, I think that for them is probably, it can be a little bit challenging, but like I told the guys, that they have to be flexible as it relates to our team at this point in time. They just all need to be ready when they're called upon to go out there. And, I understand that, okay, at this point in time in a game, I'm coming in and I'm getting myself ready. Okay, that's easier, but that's not the world we're living in now. So we've got to get probably a little bit more comfortable being uncomfortable just with what we've had to deal with. I only can speak to our team, but I think the Rockets have probably obviously dealt with it, and so have a lot of other teams. It's just kind of the way of the world, whether it's injuries, COVID, different situations like that, having an infection. I don't know what Thad will look like whenever his time is. He comes back. What does he need? How does he fit in? Is there a true second unit? Is there not? We really haven't played in practice or in a game with a true second unit. We went into those last really 2 Oklahoma City games, and in probably, those last 2 games, we probably played 8.5 players, because we weren't going to play the whole game, but we wanted to get those guys a good run. Certainly in a regular season game, you want to be able to play more than 8 players, because I don't know if that's sustainable over 72 games, just playing 8 guys on a regular basis.
Appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you.
Sam Smith, go ahead.
Billy, both yourself and the management, when they talked a while back, talked about this season and a lot of development, analysis of the players, less for production, but just to see. Do you have plans to just play different starters as this develops, just to see how other players play in that position? Or would you rather stick with a set group?
I think it's a really good question, Sam. I think that, it's something that we're going to have to feel out. I mean, ideally, you'd like to have, a consistent group that's reliable, but, I haven't had enough real time to see a lot of different lineups and guys together. And it may I've talked to these guys a lot, and I think even some of the older guys the vets have talked about, there's going to have to be a level of sacrifice that goes into it. Somebody that's starting may not start. Someone that's off the bench may be starting. I mean, those things could happen. I've got to try to find the right combinations, both starting and off the bench, I think, to help the team and help the group. And, they're going to have to understand the decisions that I'm going to try to make are for the benefit and the growth of the team. But again, we have such a small sample size and we have not had a full complement of players. So I don't know, what does Sato and Kobe potentially look like out there together? What does it look like to, play Otto consistently at the 4 or Patrick at the 4? What does it really look like to have Lowry at the center spot? Where does Thad come in? How does Thad and Lowry work together? Because we really haven't seen much of that. There's just a lot of combinations. I think you look at our roster that we haven't had a chance to explore. So to your point, some of those things could happen as the season unfolds.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Coach, that's all we have for tonight. So thank you for your time.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, you guys figured out the hand raising thing? Jamal mainly.